because we are talking of an 11-year-old or 12-year-old who is not able to access education. And Madam Speaker, what that is doing, as I said yesterday, you have children, especially girls, being lured to early marriages, to early pregnancies, to defilement cases because they do not have the food and they don't even have sanitary towels. Madam Speaker, if we cannot provide food and sanitary towels for our kids, then we are failing as a nation. Madam Speaker, this issue of capitation, even the small capitation of over 1,400 that has been put in this motion, even that one is not forthcoming, is not on time, and we have allocated the money in the budget for JSS. I have some schools in my constituency, and I can actually sample a few, Madam Speaker. I have Kigogo Primary, I have Mbegi Primary, I have Olesirwa Primary, I have Dhome. I even have a special school called Gilgil Special School that has not so far received the small capitation from the Ministry of Education. Madam Speaker, we not only need to relook the way the NGCDF is wired, but more importantly, actually, the money that should go to JSS should come from the Ministry of Education. The money we are doing and giving as bursaries, Madam Speaker, is never enough, especially for the ones that are big constituencies, Madam Speaker, like mine. You get 11,000 or more applications, and the money you give is to maybe 3,000, 5,000, all the way maybe to 7,000, and you're giving a maximum of 3,000 shillings for day secondary schools, Madam Speaker. If we add another burden, then we will need to open up the brackets. The maximum that has been set as 35% is not sufficient to cover our day schools, to cover our secondary schools, and also cover JSS, Madam Speaker. That means we are struggling with a generation. And Madam Speaker, this problem also between the TSC and the Ministry of Education must actually be addressed. And I had the seconder talk about it, because at the constituency level, you are having a problem of who is issuing orders or directives in the schools. Is it the Ministry of Education officio, chair or constituency rep, or is it the TSC, especially on the running of schools and the teachers, Madam Speaker? This confusion is not helping the already bad situation and must be addressed actually from the cabinet level. Madam Speaker, I want to support this motion and actually hope that we can be able to actually look at JSS the way it should be, because we have now gotten teachers in some schools, not all of them, but the capitation issue must be looked at per child, so that we are able to ensure that every child is not sent home. Parents already struggled to get their kids to JSS. And you remember the issues we had that time. They needed new uniform, they needed desks, they needed all manner of things when reporting. And Madam Speaker, I've seen parents struggle to buy these things. And then they are told they need to pay fees. They come to CDF, we tell them we do not fund primary schools. That confusion, Madam Speaker, is actually going to bring a serious issue, a generational issue, and we are going to lose very many children. That's why you're seeing the transition this time and this year has not been as good as it's been in the other years, Madam Speaker. So I support this motion, and I hope that we can actually get to the implementation. The implementation committee should be able to pick it up immediately so that we have a report in this House very soon to be able to know what have we done, because I have no doubt we will actually pass it in this House, because it's very important and cross-cutting in all the constituencies. But implementation of motions, that is where the problem is. Let the Committee of Implementation take it up, bring a report to the House.
Thank you very much, Honorable Martha Wangari. The Honorable Dorothy Ikiara, nominated member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish also to add my voice in this very, very important motion. And I want to thank Honorable Wakiri Edward Mureu for bringing this very sensitive matter before the floor of this House. Honorable Speaker, I too appreciate that Article 53(1)(a) entitles every child to free, quality, and compulsory basic education. Honorable Speaker, access to funding for education is not a choice. It is something that is enacted in law, and it is something that we must follow to the letter. Honorable Speaker, I share in the pain of the parents who are seated down in their homes, thinking that education is free, and every time these children go to school, they are found in the roads every day, day in, day out, Honorable Speaker, because they cannot afford some of the necessary revenues that they are being charged at the school level. I also sympathize with the teachers, Honorable Speaker, because it is not the interest of any teacher to send any child out of class. But Honorable Speaker, it is in common knowledge that no operations can continue without money. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I support this very important motion. I want to, on the outset, say the Ministry of Education, which is charged with the responsibility of ensuring that they follow the policy to the letter. They are the ones who are failing us in this sector, Honorable Speaker. The Teacher Service Commission mandate is very clear. I've heard Honorable Mheshimiwa Wangari saying they would like to know the difference between what the Teacher Service Commission is supposed to do vis-a-vis the Ministry of Education. The work of the Teacher Service Commission is purely management of teachers. That is why we fought for the Teacher Service Commission to be an independent commission, and they manage teachers, employment, transfer of teachers. The work of the Ministry of Education is policy, and computation directly falls in the Ministry of Education. Honorable Speaker, improving quantity and quality of education, therefore, requires the policy to be addressed. Both demand the demand and supply chain, Honorable Speaker, is very, very key here. For CBC to be a success, there needs to be provisions of more textbooks, classrooms, blocks, trained teachers, etc., so as to ease the supply side constraints of education. Number two, Honorable Speaker, the students also need to be fed, which is the demand constraint to education. For example, Honorable Speaker, in Ghana, it was established that one of the reasons why children do not attend school and that their parents cannot afford to pay the levies charged by the schools. If this does not happen, Honorable Speaker, then the nutritional aspect is never taken care of. And this is the more reason why we fight the enrollment in our schools is so constrained. We don't have enough students in class because, Honorable Speaker, they cannot be able to meet their basic needs. Honorable Speaker, I support this motion that indeed computation money needs to be increased. But by so saying, Honorable Speaker, it does not mean that we eat into the NGCDF kitty. Because, Honorable Speaker, NCDF kitty has its own obligation. Honorable Speaker, it is the responsibility of this government to ensure that this computation is increased, Honorable Speaker, so that it can be able to cater for the needs of the vulnerable and the less advantaged in the society. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, it is not a favor when we seek for additional allocation to the education bursary.
Thank you, Honorable Ikiara. The Honorable Zamzam Chimba, member for Mombasa County.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi nichukue nafasi hii kuweza kuzungumzia mjadala wa leo, na ni dhahiri shairi kuwa watoto wengi Mheshimiwa Spika wako nyumbani kwa sababu especially wale ambao wako katika elimu ya chekechea, elimu ya msingi, wazazi wamekuwa na mtihani katika kuwalipia ile matakwa yao katika shule, na ndio maana leo mimi nasema katika sheria ya Kenya elimu ni bure katika shule za chekechea, katika shule za msingi kwenda mbele, elimu ni bure. Na mimi nataka kusema hivi Mheshimiwa Spika, mjadala huu ni mzuri sana tukizingatia kuwa tunataka tuweze kufanya kuwa serikali waongeze ruzuku ya watoto katika skuli, ili hao watoto ambao wako katika shule za msingi ambao tunawaona wengi wamekuwa machokora kule barabarani, pengine akienda skuli unaona anaulizwa remedial fee, unaona anaulizwa kitu fulani, nenda ukanunue, mzazi hawezi. Lakini ikiwa tunaweza kuongeza ruzuku ama capitation katika haya maskuli, itakuwa wazazi wana wepesi wa kupeleka watoto shule, na tunaweza kupigana na ndoa za mapema. Manake kusema kweli, katika CDF na hata NGAF, NGCDF na NGAF, sisi tunashughulika kulipia masomo ya sekondari na masomo ya katika shule skuli za college. Na mimi nataka kusema hivi Mheshimiwa Spika, elimu huanza chini. Uweze kumweka mtoto awe na msingi mzuri wa elimu, lazima mtoto apate chakula kizuri, lazima mtoto awe darasani kila wakati, lazima mtoto akitoka nyumbani hata kama tumbo liko bila chochote, akifika skuli atapata kitu, atapata ruzuku, ataweza kufocus na masomo yake. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika kaunti yetu ya Mombasa ama gatuzi la Mombasa, Mheshimiwa Spika, ukienda pale ndani ya town, Mheshimiwa Spika, utapata watoto wengi sana wamekuwa ombaomba barabarani. Kwa sababu gani? Wazazi sisi tumewacha kufuatilia, na hasa katika serikali wameweka elimu ya bure, lakini haifuatiliwi kazingatiwa vizuri. Watoto wakipelekwa skuli, Mheshimiwa Spika, wanaulizwa mambo mengi sana. Mara utapata mtoto yuko barabarani, ukimuuliza anakuambia nilifukuzwa vitabu, nilifukuzwa kitu fulani, nilifukuzwa kitu fulani. Kwa hivyo mimi naomba serikali, kama tuliweka elimu ya bure, tuweze kuzingatia mtoto akifika shuleni. Hii elimu ya bure inakuja na package, inakuja na vitabu, inakuja na chakula, inakuja na mambo yote ambayo yatamfanya mwanafunzi akikaa darasani awe anaweza kuzingatia masomo, Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini kila uchao hao watoto wanafukuzwa nyumbani. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naweza kuwahisi wale wazazi ambao maisha yao ni duni. Ndio maana kama Mama Mombasa nasema tufuatilie sheria, na najua ipo katika sheria. Nafikiri kuna lawyers ambao wako hapa, sisi wengi hatujafuatilia sheria kikatiba vizuri, lakini wako hapa wabunge wenzetu ambao wanaweza kuelezea kwa kina kuwa kuna sheria kuwa elimu iwe ya bure. Lakini watoto wakifika skuli, Mheshimiwa Spika, wanaulizwa mambo mengi sana. Na ndio mimi naomba kama Mama Mombasa County, capitation ama kuzidisha ama zile grants ziweze kwenda pale shuleni, hawa watoto wapate kusoma bila kufukuzwa, bila kuulizwa mambo mengi. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika kaunti yangu Mheshimiwa Spika, watoto wamepata mimba za mapema. Watoto pia katika shule ya msingi wanahitaji sodo, wanahitaji kuangaliwa vizuri Mheshimiwa Spika, na bila sodo mtoto utapata amerudi nyumbani, Mheshimiwa Spika, anakutana na mtu njiani anamwambia mimi nitakupa 100, nitakupa 200, njoo tupite kwa kando nikufanya hivi na vile. Mwisho wa kwisha Mheshimiwa Spika, mtoto anapata ujauzito, hawezi kuendelea tena na masomo. Ndio tunaona mimba za mapema zinaendelea kukithiri katika kaunti zetu ama katika taifa letu. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi naomba waziri wa education, waziri wa elimu, sisi tunauliza sodo ziko wapi? Sodo ziko wapi? Sodo ziko wapi? Kama Mama County nauliza. Maana yake tumetolewa budget ya kupeleka sodo katika skuli, mpaka leo hatujapata hizi sodo, na watoto wanahangaika katika masomo yao. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga mjadala huu, isipokuwa nasema iko katika katiba, ni iweze tu kufuatiliwa na kusisitiziwa na kutiwa mkazo. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa wa Mombasa. Kwa wale ambao hawaelewi sodo ni kitu gani, ni sanitary pads. Ndio sababu Mheshimiwa anasema tunataka sodo. The Honorable Pauline Lenguris, member for Samburu County. But members, please bear with me. I know a few of you have walked to the table, but I'll do my best to balance. We can see the screen. The screen is good. There is a lot of interest in this motion. You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I stand here to support the motion. We know that education is key in our country, and we have a lot of challenges.
Sorry, member for Samburu. What is out of order, Honorable Kaluma?
Yeah, I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'm standing pursuant to Article 53, Subarticle 1B of the Constitution to ask Honorable Speaker whether the proposed resolutions number 1 and 2 of this motion, which I agree to be very important, are constitutional. And Honorable Speaker, I'm seeking your ruling before we debate the matter further. Honorable Speaker, I may not have a problem with the proposed resolution number 3, but the resolution number 1 and 2 propose the application of the national government constituency development funding to cater for matters of basic education. And Honorable Speaker, to be clear, the provisions of Article 53, Subarticle 1B, to which I've adverted, reads, if I may, that children, every child has the right to free and compulsory basic education. So should we be asking how we ensure that education is free and compulsory, or be thinking of how we can resolve to apply monies of CDF to sustain it? And Honorable Speaker, I'm saying this while aware that even as we speak, particularly for secondary school, so many students are currently at home because the capitation which should be going to each and every student is about 22,000. Only half the money has gone. We are in a state where even the very basic capitation provisions cannot be catered for. But that is not the issue for now, Honorable Speaker. The issue is, could the chair rule on the constitutionality of resolution number 1 and 2, it being the case that under those provisions of the constitutions I've cited, education at this level and everything relating to education in terms of their resourcing should be free and compulsory. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Obviously, I'll give the first opportunity to the mover of the motion, the Honorable Wakili Muriu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving this opportunity to respond to Honorable Kaluma's concerns. But before I come to the point, allow me to recognize again the presence of St. Teresa Secondary School, which hails from Gatanga constituency. Madam Speaker, this is one of the best performing schools in my constituency. And I want to assure you that this is a great learning opportunity. They can see their member of parliament in action, whereby I'm trying to make sure that they're not only well-fed, but make sure that as they learn, they are not only get the books and the good classes, but they also are well-fed. I promise them, Madam Speaker, that they'll be getting a cup of tea at 10 o'clock, a good lunch, and 4 o'clock tea. So at least, again, because I know basic quality education starts with the stomach. Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the issue about the concerns of my learned friend, Honorable Karuma, I want to say this. Number one, there is nothing unconstitutional. And I think Honorable Member Kaluma, he should have confined his argument either opposing or supporting the motion. Why am I saying that, Madam Speaker? The first resolution seeks to breathe life to Section 48 and Section 48A of NGCDF. And Section 48A states clearly that the national government Constituency Development Fund can extend the 35% which it allocates, can be able to give much, much more to bursary beyond 35% for purposes of what we call affirmative action and address the socio-economic issues, one of them being the school feeding program. Secondly, Madam Speaker, if you read carefully, and I think that's why my Honorable Karuma did not invite you to this, If you read Article 53, Article 53 is clear, especially Article 53, B and C. And B says, every child has a right to free and compulsory education. That is B. C, Article 53, B says, C says, every child has a right to basic nutrition. But Madam Speaker, the point here is very simple. We are trying, this motion is trying to breathe life into Article 53. Because you find, as I said earlier, Madam Speaker, we are provided a huge budget on education, 630 billion in this financial year. How much money of that which is going to cater for nutrition for our children? How do you expect a child to learn when he's hungry? Finally, Madam Speaker, I invite you to Article 27. Article 27 is about discrimination. And Article 27 says clearly that every person is equal before the law and has a right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law. Section 2 says, equality includes the full equal enjoyment of all fundamental rights. Madam Speaker, the point here is very simple. When it comes to allocation of school feeding program, and our budget, we only allocate to what we call arid and semi-arid areas. And we leave out. That is in breach of Article 27. Secondly, when it comes to application of Section 48 and Section 48A of NGCDF Act 2015, you find that the NGCDF board only allocates bursary to secondary school, tertiary, and universities. To do what? To go and feed those children. Madam Speaker, the point here is very simple. Everybody has a right to be protected. The NGCDF bursary is supposed to be catering from the primary all the way to university. So at least we do not violate Article 27. Number two, it's a moral issue. How do you feed adults and leave out the children? Remember, Madam Speaker, even the medical experts have said a child requires food at the age of 10. If you give the child food above the age of 10, the brain is already stunted. And if you're talking about quality education, Madam Speaker, how can we be able to achieve quality if we don't achieve quality at the basic level? And there, Madam Speaker, that's why I'm saying Honorable Karuma's intervention need to come in as his contribution to this motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Wakili Moreu. I would like to give an opportunity to the Honorable Getonga Morogara, member for Tharaka. Just focus on the matter of constitutionality.
Yes, constitutionality.
Which has been raised by the
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't agree with Honorable Kaluma that this motion has any element whatsoever of unconstitutionality. First and foremost, is relying on Article 53, which stipulates that education, basic education, is supposed to be free. That article does not say it is supposed to be cost-free. It says it is supposed to be free, which means there is an element of cost, but borne not by parents, but by the government. Therefore, we must have at the back of our minds that taxpayers' money will be used to fund the basic education of our children. Who runs our taxes? It is the government. Honorable Muriu is making a proposal that part of those taxes are applied in a different way to at NGCDF, which is government money, which is our taxes, should be varied slightly so that it is applied also to cover basic education in the primary and junior secondary. There cannot be any unconstitutionality as far as that proposal is concerned. But if Honorable Muriu had proposed that parents have to come and chip in a different way, we would be arguing on whether that is not in breach of Article 53. With those remarks, I urge you to find that there is no breach of Article 53. We are actually debating We are making proposals to the government. There also may be resolutions, but it is at one time proper law is going to be brought so that this is properly entrenched into the law and it is enforced. But as far as this is concerned, we are within the constitutional rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Murungara. I'll give two more. I'll give the Honorable McLeod.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to agree with Senior Counsel Murungara that there is actually nothing unconstitutional on this matter. In fact, Honorable Muriu is just bringing life what us members of parliament should have done after the promulgation of the new constitution. Madam Speaker, the Kenyan children, or the children of Kenya, actually the premise of the constitution were very clear. Honorable Wakili Muriu is putting it right that the children of Kenya has a right to basic nutrition. You know, we are not about to encroach into CDF, Madam Speaker, but we are saying the taxpayers' money should be applied to provide nutrition for the children of Kenya. Madam Speaker, on the matter of basic, definition of basic in terms of education in Kenya is actually right from nursery all the way to Form 4. Madam Speaker, if that is basic, therefore, if that is basic education, then, Madam Speaker, if that is basic education, that means we should not be seeing children in the streets or in the roads going home because of school fees. We should actually be able to keep our children in school all the way to Form 4. Madam Speaker, this is what needs to be applied, and it has been the work of Parliament to enforce this legislation, because after this motion, Madam Speaker, this shall lead into actually a bill to ensure that we appropriate sums of money, either through capitation by the Ministry of Education, not through the CDF, to provide for basic increased capitation and increase money for nutrition in our schools. Madam Speaker, remember, we have now added something called CBC, which has increased the number of classes in primary from PB1 all the way to junior secondary, grade 9. Madam Speaker, the CDF money is not enough. And we need, therefore, this House in the next appropriation or in the next budget, allocate resources. Madam Speaker, I agree with Honorable Miriu. That is what Parliament must do to protect the citizens of Kenya and the children of Kenya from complete oppression and discrimination, Madam Speaker.
You've made your point very well. The last one, honorable members, will be the Honorable Johanna Ngeno, member for Emurua Dikiri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would just want to, like what Mheshimiwa Kaluma wanted to seek your guidance. So in your ruling, Madam Speaker, I want you to consider the fact that Article 53, though it is talking about free access to free primary or basic education, it doesn't mean that the children or the learners who are in those schools are not taught by paid teachers, because the teachers who are teaching these particular pupils are paid by the government, not by the parents. The schools where these learners are studying in are built by the government, which of course doesn't mean the education is free. It means the parent will not incur any cost in terms of infrastructure, in terms of teaching, in terms of any other program that could be introduced by the government, which one of those programs is the school feeding program, which Mheshimiwa Muriu is trying to introduce. So it doesn't mean education is free. It means that it is a government that is catering for that cost, and therefore we would not, or this particular amendment or this particular proposal by Mheshimiwa Muriu does not, Wakili Muriu, does not contravene the Constitution, because it is asking the government, either through NGCDF or through the Ministry of Education, to cater for the school feeding program. And therefore, it is not actually taking the incurrence of the burden of incurring the cost to the parents. So I believe it is not actually contravening the Constitution. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, though I'd said that is the last one, I'll give an opportunity to the Honorable Kombe. Make it 2 minutes, please.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Ama kwa hakika wakili Mriu yuko na mipango mizuri kwa watoto wa Kenya, lakini pale ameweka kipengee cha kwamba NGCDF ikaweze kusimamia elimu ya msingi, hapo ameenda kinyume na amekeuka katiba. Maana elimu ya msingi ni bure na ni ya lazima, na kwamba ni bure na ni ya lazima haijamaanisha kwamba haigharimiwi. Ni serikali inagharimia hiyo elimu ya msingi, na wakili anastahili kuwa anawakilisha haki, lakini yeye mwenyewe anageuka katiba na kugeuka mgandamizi wa haki kwa wale wa elimu ya juu. Mheshimiwa Spika, kilichoko na ambacho binafsi naunga mkono, wakili angesema zile hela zinazopatiwa elimu ya msingi ziongezwe 100%, ingekuwa ni jambo la busara, na hapo hapo tungeweza kuunga mkono na serikali ingeweza kuongeza hiyo capitation kwa hiyo elimu ambayo inastahili kuwa ya bure na ya lazima. Asante.
Thank you very much, honorable members, for your... I choose not to give a chance to the Honorable Mureu. It may turn out that it is the learned friends speaking from both sides of the aisle. I appreciate all your contributions. But honorable members, I would like to say that, remember, this is a motion and we are urging. It's not a bill. Two, before a motion gets to this House, it has gone through several approval processes, including the Office of the Speaker and the House Business Committee. And the motion has been proposed and it has been seconded, and several people have already gone into the motion and debated. I would like to encourage the Honorable Kaluma that I'll give you an opportunity and you have a chance to oppose. So for now, it is my considered opinion that we proceed. And for that reason, honorable members, I'll go back to the honorable member who was on the floor, and that is the honorable, the member for Samburu County was on the floor. So honorable members, we proceed with the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the chance again to stand on the floor of this House to support the motion by Honorable Mureu. Actually, Madam Speaker, Article 53, 1A entitles children of this country a basic right for education, compulsory education for all children of this country. And Madam Speaker, I question if that is the case in this country today, because some things are written on the documents, but actually if you look at the practicability of it, it is not true. Because I know, Madam Speaker, that there are many children in this country who are not accessing education today. And Madam Speaker, they are not accessing education, not because they don't want, but because they are not facilitated to access education. So, Madam Speaker, when we think about compulsory, we should create policies that will ensure that all children will access education in this country. There are a lot of challenges that are facing the education sector today. Madam Speaker, if we want to retain our children in school and offer quality education, There are several factors that must be considered by the ministry that is oversighting the education programs in this country. We are talking about the school feeding program. And the areas that are targeted by the school feeding program in this country, mostly they are south regions. I happen to come from one of them. And we are facing, Madam Speaker, a lot of challenges with the school feeding program. And we know that that was one of the moves to ensure that children can access education well, their nutritional value is also taken care of. Madam Speaker, the food that is coming to the schools have been erratic. It is not consistently coming, and we have seen most children dropping out of school because they are not accessing food that they are supposed to get. And that will ensure also the retention of students in our schools. Sometimes the food comes late when they are nearing closing, and sometimes a whole term can go without the school getting the school feeding program food. So that is one of the aspects that we should look as a members of this house, so that we ensure that education and food of our children, that will ensure the nutrition value of our children, they should go together. Another aspect, Madam Speaker, is the issue of infrastructure of our schools. We have introduced just the CBC program recently, and most of the schools have no classrooms. The children are supposed to transit to the grade 6, grade 7, 8, and 9, and in some areas, there is no infrastructure. In some instances, the parents have been forced to buy desks, to buy books, and also to buy uniform, which is very expensive to some of them who come from poor families. And this has also prevented the children from accessing education. So before introducing any program, I think those are the structures and policies that the government should ensure that before they start anything new, they should ensure that the infrastructure has been put in place, and to ensure all the students from all over this country can be able to transit into the new program. Because we have been faced with a lot of challenges with the new CBC program. The parents have been stressed with getting the money for the uniforms for their children. Some of them cannot afford for the food, because children are supposed to move to the nearer schools where they can access the grade 7, sorry. And some cannot even have money to buy the desks, because they were forced to buy the desks. So every time they run to their members of parliament or to their leaders to seek for support. Another issue is the books. There are institutions in this country that children cannot even get books for studies. So these are the programs that the Ministry of Education and the TSC should ensure that we have the required infrastructure in place before we go and implement a new program altogether. And I support strongly the capitation to be increased in schools, so that the capitation money can ensure that our children can get food when they are in school. They can also get the textbooks that are required for their learning, and small improvement in the schools can be done. And thank you, Madam Speaker, and I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member for Samburu County. Honorable members, we have several students and teachers. I would like to start with the ones seated in the public gallery. This morning, we have Mothe Ngera Secondary School from Laikipia West, Laikipia County. Kabati Secondary School, Laikipia West, Laikipia County. And Shalom Junior Academy, Kikuyu, Kiambu County. On behalf of myself and the House, we welcome you to continue observing proceedings in the House. Honorable members, I now invite the Honorable Kaluma.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I stand to support this motion in parts and oppose the motion in several parts. Honorable Speaker, this motion, number one, proposes that the amount that can be allocated towards bursary be increased beyond the 35% restriction or limitation that is currently under the NGCDF Act of 2015. Honorable Speaker, I agree and support that part. Let each constituency, so long as they are performing national government functions, have the free range based on their priorities to apply those funds within those functions. If it is that the bursary component of education would require more than 35, Honorable Speaker, so be it. There should be that freedom to ensure that not only school infrastructure are put in place, but that students are actually enabled and they are in school. Honorable Speaker, I also support the prayer number 3, which is to the fact of requesting this House to resolve that government revises the capitation per student in primary schools from the current 1,420 shillings per year to at least 7,760 per year, being the minimum optimal capitation, factoring the new CBC education system and the prevailing high cost of living. Honorable Speaker, CBC has come, and I agree with my colleagues, there are very high cost ramifications. We debated the matter of CBC before, the kind of uniform the students at CBC level, more so junior secondary, are being required to wear, the change in the facility needs, and even the infrastructure needed has increased. So indeed, if we are going into this new curriculum, there should be increased capitation from government to sustain it, and on that I agree with. Let me say, Honorable Speaker, that even as we urge increase, let us also as a House push very hard that the government ensures that these monies are remitted to the schools in time. Honorable Speaker, we have national exams, particularly Kenya National Examination, KCSE, Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education Examination, coming just in a few weeks' time. And across the nation, students have been sent back home for fees. And I've seen people, even on Twitter, even on social media, condemning teachers. But teachers are in a situation where they cannot manage the schools. They are at pains having students in school waiting for exams being prepared without food. And as parents, or people standing in as parents with these students, they don't know what to do with them. The fact of the matter is that the capitation, even at the level of secondary education, honorable members, is some 22,000 shillings and some hundreds on it. So far, the academic year is ending, but the Ministry of Education has only disbursed half that money, actually barely 11,000. So I've had teachers, even from my place, asking me, Kaluma, you are pushing for your students to be in school, but we are not able to keep students we cannot feed. Let us urge the Ministry of Education, and we budgeted for these monies, that money is being available, and money is available, Honorable Speaker. Let us stop this pretense that money is not there. I work in the Security Committee, and I've supervised even how much money we collect on the e-platform. Last month alone, we did over 199 billion shillings on the e-platform alone. Let us have our priorities right. Let us not just push for capitation to be increased, but as a parliament, push that once these capitations are increased, money is actually available to the school managers to be able to use the money. Honorable Speaker, in terms of resolution number 1 and 2, I maintain the position that we cannot be spending monies under the NGCDF to resource basic education requirements. And Honorable Speaker, let me emphasize that basic education is defined under the Basic Education Act, and that definition excludes secondary education going forward. That is why, because Article 53, sub-Article 1 says that basic education shall be free and compulsory, no money in CDF can go there. The money can only go to those others which the government is not obligated. For basic and free and compulsory education, what we need to push is for money to be given directly for them by the government. On account of those facts, Honorable Speaker, I oppose in part and support in part. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
What is out of order, Honorable Dr. Pukose? And please bear in mind that the Honorable Kaluma has already concluded.
I know, Honorable Speaker. I know, Honorable Speaker, and Honorable Kaluma is a seasoned lawmaker in this House. But I got confused in that when you say you support in part and you oppose in part, normally when we vote in the House, Madam Speaker, you can either vote with amendments, bring an amendment so that
it can go the way you want. There is no vote that comes in part, that yes or no. Yeah. So you can only make an amendment to it. And being also one of the speakers panel, I think he needs to guide the House properly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I am inclined to go back to the Honorable Kaluma. Would you like to comment on the serious matter raised by the Honorable Dr. Pukose?
Yes, Honorable Speaker, we are of course not dealing with a bill or voting. We are contributing to a motion. We'll be voting on it later. But for clarity, Honorable Speaker, and for good order in the House, let me say I support with those reservations.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kaluma, and thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Pukose, also for raising that. Honorable members, I do not see the Honorable Indikiri Mogambi in the House, is next on this. The next one will be the Honorable Johanna Ngeno, Emukuru Dikri. Honorable members, I'm very keen. He made contribution on the constitutional matter that had been raised by the Honorable Kaluma, so he did not really debate. So it is your chance, Honorable Member for Emukuru Dikri.
Madam Speaker, my constituency is called Emurua Dikir. I know it's a very hard name to pronounce, but Madam Speaker, thank you for also giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion by Mheshimiwa Wakili Edward. Madam Speaker, before I even begin my contribution, I would just want to urge the member to look into making it as a bill or as an amendment, so that when we vote in this House, it becomes a law. It goes into the annals of history in this country that we have done a law that goes towards helping our kids in primary and secondary schools access education in a free and fair manner. But, Madam Speaker, I really want to support it. I want to support it because I feel that the problems that we are facing as a country, which includes the high cost of living, is faced by everybody, including even our kids in schools. It is not something that we face it in cities. It's not something that is faced by people in towns and just centers. It is a problem that is faced right to the core, to the villages and to the schools. Madam Speaker, the late President Moore introduced the milk program, which was actually a very good idea. And I think that idea, Madam Speaker, was to bring the students who are absconding schools, and especially those who are coming from mass areas. It is actually during the milk days, Madam Speaker, when schools were full. I'm among those people who would attend school when it was a milk day. Madam Speaker, so many of us went to school because of that program. So many people went to school because of that program. Madam Speaker, I have been sitting even with the members of the society in my constituency, especially those who have children in day schools, day secondary schools. And their major complaint, Madam Speaker, is the lunch program, the feeding program, that is money for lunch. Madam Speaker, if they have that problem in the secondary part, how about the primary part? How about the basic education part? So, Madam Speaker, I'm in full support. And my first proposal, Madam Speaker, if Mheshimiwa Mureo will bring it as a bill or as an amendment, I would wish him to amend the part of, in the Ministry of Education, first to provide, when we are providing for capitation, when we add a budget to provide for school feeding program for students and pupils right from PP1 to Standard 8, and from Form 1 to Form 4, so that we budget for that money, so that before we even delve to the amount that is allocated to CDF, Madam Speaker, we budget in this House money meant for a school feeding program, so that when we are sending money for capitation, we also include money for feeding the pupils from PP1 to Standard 8. Madam Speaker, I'm in full support, because we also understand most of the students come from, or the pupils come from far areas. They food for something like 5 kilometers to their homes. So when they are sent home during lunch time to go and maybe eat before they come back, Madam Speaker, it becomes hectic. It also removes part of their concentration in class. So I fully support this particular motion by Mheshimiwa Muriu to ensure that we add either in CDF or we put it in as part of the capitation. My only request to Mheshimiwa Wakili Muriu is to ensure that you bring it as an amendment, because this motion is just a motion and it is going to end up in the coffers, in table room, and it will die there. Just bring it as a motion. We will support you, we'll vote for it, and we will ensure that we budget for those particular school feeding programs. I thank you, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Johanna Ngeno. Honorable members, I have a lot of interest in this motion from the right side. So when you see me giving many people on this side, it's because they are the ones who have expressed. So I am going to the Honorable Ngelechei, member for Elgeyo Marakwet County. If you have intention to speak on this motion, kindly on the left side, please make sure that your card is on, so that we can see you on the screen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving the chance to contribute in this very important motion. Madam Speaker, we have a problem, and I want to fully support the motion by Honorable Muriu, because at times we do forget a lot in this country that our future is in schools. Our future is in basic education. And our future as a country relies basically on education. That is how we are going to get doctors. That is how we are going to get engineers. That is how we are going to get experts in any and every other field. And that is how this house will continue for generations to come. Madam Speaker, we need to refocus and we need to think about the CBC. We need to think about the students, especially in Standard 7, Madam Speaker. And since the capitation of schools does not involve basic education, Madam Speaker, these students of class 7, grade 7, it's like were meant to suffer, and they suffer more than any other student in this country, Madam Speaker. If I give you an example, especially where I come from, one day while I was going, I was moving in within the county, I met students of a school called Nyawa Primary School, and I asked them where they were going in a scorching sun. And they told me they are going to laboratory in a secondary school that is 10 kilometers, like around, I think it's between 5 and 10 kilometers, called Anin Day School. Madam Speaker, I asked them, they told me we have to be scheduled time, because even the school they are going to is a day school with minimum resources. And there is a big secondary school within that area, but they cannot go to that secondary school because this is a day school and this is a primary school. Madam Speaker, I've been thinking about the person who came up with the idea of CBC, or came up with the idea of being domiciled in primary school, Madam Speaker, never thought that these students will need resources like laboratories, and they don't have any resources. Madam Speaker, I think it was the best thing if these CBC students, grade 7, would have been domiciled in secondary schools. And this idea of secondary schools being counted with a capacity of beds and not capacity of chairs, Madam Speaker, is a wrong idea. They should be open to these students, especially of primary schools within those areas, so that they can benefit with the resources. Madam Speaker, I want to support, and I wish to say that it is about time we rethink about basic education, because these secondary school going, I don't know if they are secondary schools, I get confused because they are primary schools actually, because grade 7 is domiciled in primary school. They have to think, when you say basic education, these students must be fed. Otherwise, it will not be basic if a school will miss school because of feeding. Number 2, provision of sanitary towels to girls. Otherwise, there will be a breakdown in between of those students who are in grade 7 right now. So, Madam Speaker, I want to support, and I want to request that someday in this house we should also relook at the issue of opening up more space for transition from primary schools to secondary schools, even if it means all the secondary schools allow students who can access the facilities at the well-established secondary schools. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
you very much. The Honorable Parashina Sakimba, member for Kajiado South.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to support the motion by Honorable Wakili on the issue of, on the motion of the review of the scope of the education bursary scheme under NGCDF and capitation for learners in primary and junior secondary school. Madam Speaker, I wanted to also support comments by other honorable members. And this issue of junior secondary school, they have been left aside. This is a group that has been neglected in many ways. When you only talk about us including them in giving them a bursary, it is in order. Even if you are giving a small amount of 3,000 shillings, because these people are affected. Now the students are at home, and they are coming to our homes and our offices, try to see what they can be done to them. But to bring to your attention, Madam Speaker, this group again, you know very well that the teachers, the employment of teachers who are teaching in junior secondary schools, there is a shortage of teachers in the entire country concerning the GSS. If you go again to the issue of classrooms or even labs, now in many places we don't have even labs for them. So, Madam Speaker, there is a big challenge, and I'm saying that we cannot afford to have them included in the NGCDF allocation. Then it will be meaning that we have been affecting the issue of universal basic education under Article 27. So I propose that even if there is because there is a capitation already going on, but also the ministry, I don't know if they are aware that they are affecting these students, because even the capitation that is going on now on the money that they are supposed to receive, it is being delayed. I beg this House, let us consider this is a class or a group that was formed when our country and our government was not ready to take care of them. So when Honorable Wakili brought this issue, we propose that he's also going to do the small amendments and make it a bill and be enacted in the law. He will go in history and remembered as a member of parliament who brought a very good bill that is going to take care of the students of the Republic of Kenya. There's a big challenge, GSS, and I support the motion, and we are ready to listen on the amendment, and when it comes to the bill, I'm on the opinion that I'll also support the same. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, member for Kajiado. The Honorable Lydia Mizigi, member for Taita Taveta County.
Asante sana, Speaker, hata mimi kunipatia fursa ili niweze kuchangia hapa. Na kwanza natangulia kwa kumpongeza wakili Mheshimiwa Edward Mureu kwa kuliwaza hili na kulileta hapa ili tuweze kulizungumza na tuweze kulichangia. Jambo hili nataka kuliunga mkono. Nisema ni vyema sana kwa kuweza kuwa na mpango mzima ya hii pesa iweze kuongezwa kwa mfumo huo wa CDF ili masuala ya kupata chakula shuleni yaweze kuwepo. Speaker, naweza kukueleza wengine wetu hapa tuliweza kusoma kupitia changamoto mingi sana, na motisha ambayo ilikuwa nyingine inatupeleka shuleni ni yale maziwa yalikuwa maziwa ya Nyayo. Na basi yale maziwa yalikuwa yanatusababisha sisi tunakuwa shuleni, na wakati mwingine yalikuwa huo ndo mlo tu utaupata kwa siku ile. Kwa hivyo naunga mkono kabisa ya kwamba kuwe na chakula, watoto wa shule wapate chakula shuleni hata kama ni mlo mmoja kwa siku. Tunajua changamoto zilizoko katika familia mbalimbali siku hizi. Kuna wengine wanaenda hata bila mlo mmoja manyumbani zao kwa siku. Na kwa hivyo kama wataupata mlo huo shuleni, basi wataweza kwenda pale shuleni. Vile vile tunajua ya kwamba mpangilio huo itakapofika wakati wake, pengine Mungu akiwezesha, kwa sababu tunamuomba Mheshimiwa Mureu ya kwamba asiwachie hapo, aipeleke mbele kabisa iwe sheria ili tuweze kuifanikisha. Mlo huo tunaomba kwamba uwe ni mlo safi, uje kwa wakati wa sawa, na iwe ni lishe bora, chakula ambacho kitakuwa na ile inaitwa balanced diet kwa Kiingereza. Asante sana, na mimi naunga mkono.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Jared Okello, member for Nyando.
Madam Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity. And I want to also, on the same breath, thank my brother, Honorable Muriu, a very good guy, first-timer, and he's already looking ahead of the pack. Honorable Speaker, we are debating this because we are concerned about the future generation. The future generation relates to the children who are going to school now, who have been disenfranchised by certain things that happen within the education sector. Madam Speaker, taking a tangent from my colleagues, number one is if we are to consider the junior secondary section with disbursement of bursaries, Madam Speaker, that then becomes the 5th class that has to be considered under this category within the high school, Madam Speaker. We are currently servicing...
Wakili Moreu.
Oh, I hope I will
What
get
is out
regain
of
my
order?
time.
You will start from the 2nd minute.
Is it in order, Madam Speaker, for my honorable member, Bona Jarrett, to speak when he's hiding? Nobody can see him in this chamber, so kindly, we want to see his mouth moving. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Wakili Moreu, there is nothing out of order. The place that he's seated is a seat in this house. Actually, it is one of the high seats in the house, so it is in order for you to proceed.
Okay, thank you, thank you. That's a good banter. So, Madam Speaker, the 5th class that will be added on if we were to consider the junior secondary section on this, that therefore means that we have to up the NGCDF allocation, which will then incorporate the junior secondary school. Otherwise, if we are to move by the current budgetary allocation on bursary and then the entire NGCDF disbursed annually to sub-counties or constituencies, then we shall fall short by a big margin on this, Madam Speaker. We have, as members of parliament, been receiving requests after requests from parents of these children in junior secondary schools. But our regulations, again, under NGCDF regulations and the NGCDF Act, does not talk about junior secondary schools. So we are having our hands tied as members of parliament on the kind of answer to provide to these parents who are constantly at our doorsteps asking for assistance, Madam Speaker. I support fully the idea of increasing the bursary allocation from 35%, Honorable Speaker. If you were to take, for instance, schools in Nairobi, to a larger extent, these schools have already been built. And therefore, you take very little amount to do infrastructural development, yet there are many students who are languishing at home. So Nairobi members of parliament are at a gridlock. They do not know exactly what to do. They have money, but they have a ceiling on bursary allocation. So how we wish that this would be midwifed into a bill, enacted into this house so quickly, so that we can have the latitude to play about with this bursary as and when necessary. If Nairobi, for instance, would have up to 60% of this allocation going to bursaries, then we are going to have lots of students plugged into school who are currently stuck somewhere. Madam Speaker, there is the element of corporate social responsibility within the NGCDF board. I am afraid that this money only benefits those who sit in the NGCDF committee, Madam Speaker. A school, for instance, Ombaka in my constituency, which suffers perennial flooding each and every time, Madam Speaker, cannot access these CSR responsibilities from the NGCDF board, Madam Speaker. Therefore, we need to really look into the real concerns emanating from the ground and not just considering members of the NGCDF committee. Otherwise, all of us, for 349, cannot be all members of NGCDF in order to get the CSR responsibility from the NGCDF board. And I think this has to be properly considered so that our children across the country can also benefit just the same way as others who have been endowed by the NGCDF committee in this house. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity and I support
The Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, member for Kwanza.
At the long last, Madam Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity at the long last. First and foremost, I want to thank Honorable Muriui for coming up with this very important motion. And I wish, Madam Speaker, that the chairman of CDF was also present here. And I think most of these items that you are talking about is basically attached, it's included, the chairman of the CDF. And I hope that you have the time to brief him on the members' perspective on the same. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I stand to support this motion because basically what you are saying here is that the funding must be expanded to increase the changes that we have had in the education, which again is our own making. And therefore, I think all we're trying to say is that we should therefore then look at ways and means of increasing the Article 27 of the CDF funding, which of course was in 2015, to include the new program, education program. Madam Speaker, it's important that we look at that because basically population of this country has increased. And therefore that's why we're having a new curriculum in the education. And therefore, my take, Madam Speaker, is that we should now be able to look at the CDF program afresh. And therefore, I want this again to go down. And I think the most important thing that the third reading of this particular motion, if it's going to be passed, is that to be able to then to have the increasement, the CDF increasing the 15%, 35% to something like 50 or even 45%, so that can be able to include the new capital. But on the feeding programs, again, I have a question mark, because in the past, and ask me, in the past, it was abused. It was abused at the grassroots level because parents actually misunderstood the essence of that program, the feeding program. To the extent, and most of the members here were there, some of them actually participated in that feeding program. Madam Speaker, you will find that a parent takes a child to school basically at the time of the feeding. And thereafter, he takes the child away. That has happened. I saw that. I witnessed that. I saw that in my village. And therefore, if we are going to have the feeding program in the computation of this particular program, again, we have to be very, very strict on who actually participates in that feeding program to encourage our children to stay in school. Because some parents are so careless that they take the child to school just at the time of feeding. After that, he takes the child away. And he says, my child is not feeling very well on the same day. That again is something that we are going to do that as an observation. And therefore, I want us to very quickly look at this and program so that I can be able to come the next year. The SIS program is there, and increase the funding in CDF from the current 35% to maybe 45% or more, so that can be able to incorporate these new programs in education. That is quite good, the CPC program, and I hope that we'll be able to correct some of the issues that we had in the past. With those few remarks, I want to thank you, and I support this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, time for this motion has come to the end, and I would like to call upon the mover to reply. The mover can choose to give an opportunity to some of you to make comments.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And for the opportunity to reply. I can see a lot of interest on this bill. I know the members would like to say a word. Madam Speaker, I want to be magnanimous and give them an opportunity to to make their 1 minute remark. I don't need my time for them to make 1 minute remark. Allow me to give Honorable Kwenya 1 minute, John Oyula 1 minute, Honorable Jerry 1 minute, Honorable Mohammed Ali 1 minute, Honorable Member for Kadui, Honorable Makali 1 minute, Doris Donye 1 minute, Agnes Pareyo 1 minute, Naomi Wako 1 minute, and finally Honorable Sane 1 minute. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You follow the order? We will follow the order.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Wakili, for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, because I only have a few seconds to make my contribution, I want to say from the onset that many dreams are lost or achieved or realized at the point of basic education. And therefore, this motion could not have come at a better time than this. In my support, in support, I would say, recalibration of CDF is something that we've been waiting for a long time, so that then we can be in a position to fund education from primary level to JSS to tertiary level. Therefore, I support this motion, and I seek that members pass this and CDF implements with the speed that it deserves.
The Honorable Mohammed Ali.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mimi kwa sababu ya muda ninaunga mkono huu mswada wa wakili Moreu na kusema ya kwamba ni vyema NGCDF iweze.
The Honorable Member Foyata. I'm sure you have not forgotten that you are in the Augusta House. I request that you make your steps all the way, bow, and come back. If you need assistance, you can get assistance from your colleague, the one who just called you to cross from the left to the right. Thank you very much. You may proceed, Honorable Mohammed Ali.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu ya hiyo naomba niongezewe muda wangu. Naunga mkono wakili Moreu kwa mswada huu mzuri zaidi na kupendekeza pia hii NGCDF iweze kupewa nafasi, ingawa nafasi iko, iweze kupewa nafasi na nguvu zaidi ya kuweza kuhakikisha ya kwamba hizi pesa zimeweza kufika katika shule ya msingi. Katika kipengee cha CDF section 48 imekubalia ile imejificha iwekwe wazi na ihakikishe ya kwamba hawa watoto tunaweza wapa pesa ili waweze kupata basari kama wengine na chakula pia. Mheshimiwa Spika, utaona wabunge wengi wanakimbilia mashirika ya kibinafsi kama Tap to Eat ambayo inawasiliana na CDF kuweza kujenga majiko ya kisasa ili chakula iweze kupatikana kutokana na matatizo haya ya wabunge kutoweza kufika katika shule za msingi. Pia katika kipengee cha katiba article number 53 inasema kila mtoto ana haki ya elimu. Ya C inasema pia mambo ya basic nutrition ya kuhakikisha ya kwamba kuna afya bora. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika,
The Honorable Oyula. We started from zero, Honorable Mohammed Ali. The Honorable Oyula, you have 1 minute.
Let me begin by thanking Mheshimiwa Wakili for giving me.
We cannot hear you at all. Please move to the next. Move to the next mic.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me start by thanking Mheshimiwa Wakili for giving me this 1 minute. I want to support the bill, the motion, and I would ask Mheshimiwa Wakili to go move a bit ahead and ensure that the Ministry of Education takes full responsibility of the child from primary to secondary without moving even to the CDF. In other areas, the child belongs to the ministry or to the government from nursery to the university. So we should come to a stage
The Honorable Njeri Maina, member for Kirinyaga County.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. I rise to support the motion by my colleague, Honorable Akili Mureu, and state that, Honorable Speaker, we need to ensure that we are funding JSS so that we can facilitate CBC. Honorable Speaker, even as we speak about funding for schools, we have attendant costs that are not catered for by the government, Honorable Speaker. I support this motion in totality, Honorable Speaker, and I beseech my colleague to bring it as a bill in this House, and we will be ready to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Makali.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity, and to my colleague for being magnanimous. Article 53 makes basic education a basic right, and the government is supposed to put in measures to ensure that this constitutional imperative is honored. As we speak, Madam Speaker, and as rightly pointed out by Honorable Akili Muriu, to say that basic education is free in this country is a misnomer. Right now, most pupils are at home, teachers are having difficulties because of non-release of the capitation on time. I will basically support this motion wholeheartedly and state that the government and the ministry in particular should be able to release the capitation in good time so that head teachers are not put in trouble to ensuring that the students remain in school. Equally, I support the increase in the capitation towards basic education, because you cannot make it compulsory and you do not create an environment for the realization.
The Honorable Donya.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I have to be quick. Basic education is key to our children, and as we even support this motion of increasing the resources, Madam Speaker, I can be quoted. Back home, Kisii County, is a primary school of a population of 780 pupils of MSR primary school going to the river, 780 lining up to fetch water. When will they even attend class? I'm waiting for the day we will make it compulsory that every school must have access to clean water, good roads, and electricity. If we have these three things, I can assure you that we will be all celebrating what we call quality education. But the fact that we don't have them, we still have a long way to go. No water, what are we talking about? Good roads, no.
The Honorable Pareio.
Giving me this opportunity, and equally I would like to thank Wakili Mureu for coming up with this issue, and again giving me an opportunity to add my voice to this issue. Education is key, and when we talk about education, without education there is no development. And whoever came up with this idea of JSS and then looking forward and not coming back again to see how comfortable they were, these JSS were left at the primary schools without laboratories, no electricity, and no classrooms, and they have no teachers. So it is time for us not only to think about NGCDF, but also go forward again to tell the government or the Ministry of Education it is time they give these students enough teachers. Because
the Honorable Sanei.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've come in supporting Honorable Wakili Edward. I've come to my sense that even in the universities, we give capitation and yet give bursaries. So there is no harm in supporting CBC in as much as there is capitation for basic education. The issue is work must follow roles, responsibilities. We need more money for CDF so that this nomenclature about CBC, where they fit and where they don't fit, ceases to boggle our minds anymore. All we need is more responsibilities followed by money. Otherwise, I wholesomely support Wakili Edwards' motion. Thank you.
Very much. The Honorable Naomi Wako.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add to this. I also want to thank Honorable Edward for bringing this at this particular time. And many have said that basic education entitles every child to free and quality and compulsory basic education. But the problem is that in some parts of this country, many children are not going to school, and that is why I feel Education Committee should be visiting every part of this country so that they can see the status of some areas and also see the number of children who are not going to school. Madam Speaker, I support this, and in addition to that, I want to say that the schools should be properly equipped, corruption should be free, and especially as we implement the school feeding program, because many things are happening, even under that program.
The Honorable Wakili Moreu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You have only 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to reply to the members. Madam Speaker, it has come out clearly among the members of Parliament that education is an equalizer. And it's the equalizer between the children of the poor and the children of the rich, so that those children can have an equal opportunity in serving this country. And Madam Speaker, the members have alluded very, very clearly, succinctly, that it's only by making sure that the children of the poor and the children of the rich eat the same meal, so at least they can be able to have the energy and capacity to learn. Finally, Madam Speaker, it has come out clearly that it's only after feeding our children that we can demand performance. Madam Speaker, and because of the quorum and because of the great interests of this matter before the House, I rise under Standing Order number 53(3) of the Standing Order and request this matter be deferred, putting the question be deferred to another date which you find appropriate, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Wakili Moreu. Honorable members, the request by the Honorable Moreu is accented to, and the question to be put will be deferred to another sitting as will be scheduled by the House Business Committee. Honorable members, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome a delegation seated in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon. We have the 6th Student Organization of Kibabii University, SOKU, Student Council, and Electoral College representatives. They are accompanied by Dr. Benson Murumba Nasongo, Dean of Students, and Ms. Susan Okonji Adina, Senior Students Counselor. They are from Kandui constituency, Bungoma County. You are welcome to the National Assembly so that you may observe the proceedings of the House. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, expansion of drug and substance abuse rehabilitation centers.
Honorable members, that is order number 11. The Honorable John Makali. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity granted to me once more. At the outset, before I move my motion, I wish to extend a warm hand of welcome to the students from Kibabii University who come from my constituency. Kibabii University is is a bright university, vibrant universities. It is not having many issues with management as other universities, so we wish to take this opportunity to welcome them to the National Assembly and ask each of them as leaders to identify which seat they might want to occupy here in future, including one that is being occupied by yours truly. The secret is to work very hard, and we encourage them to work very hard and send the regards back home. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Back to the motion. Madam Speaker, I wish to move the following motion, that aware that according to the National Protocol for Treatment of Substance Use Disorders in Kenya by the Ministry of Health, drug abuse has been increasing in Kenya, especially among the youth, with statistics indicating that more than half of drug users are aged between 10 and 19 years, further aware that research released by the National Authority for the Campaign Against Drug Abuse, NACADA, in December 2022, placed Western Region as the leading region in alcohol and substance abuse at 23.8%, followed by the Coast Region at 13.9%, and the Central Region at 11.9%. Recognizing that the high level of drug abuse in the Western Region is attributable to illegal entry points from neighboring countries and unlicensed establishments, especially in Bungoma and Busia counties, with statistics indicating that 2 out of every 5 establishments in Bungoma operate illegally. Further recognizing that a majority of the consumers of illegal substances are school-going children who end up dropping out of school, cognizant of the fact that the Alcoholic Drinks Control Act 2010 established the Alcoholic Drinks Control Fund, whose purpose is to, among other things, facilitate the dissemination of information on alcoholic drinks and promote rehabilitation programs in the country. This House urges the government to institute intensive programs for the dissemination of information on alcohol and substance abuse in line with the Alcoholic Drinks Control Act 2010 and to increase the number of rehabilitation centers across the countries. Madam Speaker, we are staring at a problem of magnificent proportions. The recent report released by NACADA indicates that there are increased cases of drug and substance abuse in this particular country. I am aware, Madam Speaker, that under Schedule 4 of the Constitution of Kenya, the issue of control of drugs is left for the county governments. But there is no part of this particular country that is not a county. Therefore, we need to take up this particular problem and address it. The statistics that were released by NACADA in December 2022 are very shocking. It says that 1 out of every 11 youths aged between 15 to 24 years were currently using at least one drug or substance of abuse. It also says that 1 in every 5 youths aged between 25 to 35 years were currently using at least one drug of substance abuse. It also says that 1 in every 3 Kenyans aged between 13 to 65 years, translating to a population of 8 million people, had minimal depressive disorders. Drug and substance abuse, Madam Speaker, has wrecked families. Children have been left destitute owing to consumption of drugs, specifically alcohol, cocaine, cannabis sativa, and heroin. And Madam Speaker, unless and until this problem is addressed, we are staring at a very bleak future. Jobs have been lost because of excessive consumption of drugs. Children, in the survey that was carried out by 2 commissions into cases of school unrest, drug and alcohol consumption was singled out as some of the causes that were causing consumption or causing unrest in our schools. So in the recent report by NACADA, one of its purposes was to ensure that rehabilitation centers are created so that people who have these substance use disorders are not treated like, criminals, but they are treated like victims who have a mental health disease, who need to actually be attended to. If we look at the statistics of rehabilitation centers in this particular country, Madam Speaker, we find that only 5 rehabilitation centers are run by the government of Kenya. 90% of the rehabilitation centers are run by faith-based organizations and other private entities. It is the role of government by creation of NACADA, which has been given a role to carry dissemination of information, to carry sensitization, advocacy, to ensure that not almost half of our population is imbibing drugs. And this problem is getting worse, Madam Speaker, owing to digitization. Right now we are finding youths, underage children, are buying these drugs through online platforms. we have not been able to control online platforms. The county governments were given a role of putting up control of, setting up mechanisms to control licensing. But most of the county governments, I wish to state that they have failed because their main obsession is licensing outlets where these drugs are sold. And because of their main concern is revenue collection. You will find in most urban centers, wines and spirit shops littered everywhere, where this alcohol is being sold across the counter to even very, very young people. We need to move from this hammer-tongue approach, where the national government at the county level is only concerned about arresting these people and taking them to courts and treating them as victims or criminals. We need to begin taking this as a mental issue and look at it as a mental disease which we need to take care of. How do we take this as a mental disease? There are people who have, if you move in the streets, let's say in Bungoma, you'll find young boys sniffing glue. These people create street families. With time, they mutate, they become criminals. But we are not focusing on treating these people. The only way we can be able to treat these people is to establish rehabilitation centers. These rehabilitation centers, we can ring-fence all the funds that are collected from licensing of these outlets that sell alcohol and drugs. Ring-fence all those funds that are used for licensing and direct them towards running of these rehabilitation centers. Because I think in each of all our constituencies, we will find families that have been wrecked by alcohol consumption, by drug use, consumption of cannabis sativa. You arrest these people, we take them to courts. Yes, we find them, but we release them back to society. They go back to the same habits they were with. So, Madam Speaker, I was moving that this House urges the government of the Republic of Kenya to ensure that we put up rehabilitation centers almost in each and every part of the county, so that these people who are now addicted to drug and substance use can be treated as patients, sufficient funds can be put there, people can be capacity built, so that they are actually treated. We treat this as an ailment, not as a criminal offense which you arrest people and take them to court and have them fined, then they return back to their normal circumstances. Equally, Madam Speaker, we created an organization known as NACADA. This was supposed to do sensitization, run rehabilitation centers. NACADA is not being adequately funded to be able to run its programs, specifically in civic education, outreach programs. When I visited their offices, they are only running one rehabilitation center in Meritini in Mombasa. But even then, they have challenges. What are the challenges they're having? They're having the challenges of funding, they're having challenges of staff, they're having challenges of, keeping the patients there. So we need to facilitate this organization so that they can be able to perform its statutory mandate as given up in the enabling statute that actually creates them. We believe, Madam Speaker, that we need to move from treating these people who are suffering from substance abuse. Some of them have lost jobs. Some of them have, families have been left destitute. Some of them have even died. So that we will do a paradigm shift so that we treat them as mental patients who require actual treatment and not punishment. Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I beg to move and request the Honorable Dorothy Kiara to second this particular motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to add my voice to this very important motion, and I want to thank Honorable Makari for bringing this before the floor of this House. Expansion of drug and substance abuse rehabilitation centers is a must for this country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, President Richard Nixon, June 18, 1971, declared drug abuse public enemy #1. Madam Speaker, based on this, we too are aware that the right to health was again recognized as a human right in 1966 International Convent on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Drug and substance abuse is a major health concern in our country today. Madam Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya and Article 26, which appreciates the sanctity of life, and acknowledges the right of every person to life, and Article 43(1)(a) on the right to the highest attainable standard of health by all, is what we must ride on, Madam Speaker, as we think of this very, very important motion. Madam Speaker, aware that a majority of the people who abuse drugs and substance are already sick people. Madam Speaker, addiction treatment and rehabilitation centers in Kenya is largely a private sector and NGO affair, dating back in 1978. This denies people the right to prevention, treatment, and control of this menace, and the provision of health-related education and information as envisaged by our Constitution. Kenya can make huge strides if we adopt this motion. Madam Speaker, for example, Portugal in the 1990s was known as the heroin capital of Europe. Shifting from a criminal approach to a public health one, the so-called Portugal model, as a dramatic result. The number of heroin users in Portugal has dropped from 100,000 before the law to just 25,000 today. Portugal now has the lowest drug-related deaths rate in Western Europe. To adequately address the prevalence of drug abuse, there is urgent need for physical expansion of drug and substance abuse rehabilitation centers in our country today, as well as in addressing the approach adopted in these rehabilitation centers. Madam Speaker, I therefore propose there is need for further research to understand why more Kenyans are abusing drugs and substance. Number two, we must develop evidence-based programs which will effectively be able to prevent the relapse after treatment of a drug patient. Number three, community surveillance to curb the sale of recent drinks and drugs on young and vulnerable population. Madam Speaker, I want to stress on what the mover of this motion has just alluded to, that we have not been able to adequately ensure that we are able to curb this menace by ensuring that we have less outlets where these illicit drugs are sold. Madam Speaker, then number four, the enforcement of guidelines and laws on the above measures. Madam Speaker, we want to look at the population-wide education to prevent alcohol and substance misuse, then establish youth sustainable livelihood programs at country level to divert attention from drug and alcohol. Madam Speaker, with this, I want to urge this House, as I second this motion, to participate in this very, very important motion if we have to save our generation. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I second.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kiara. Honorable members, I now propose the question that aware, according to the National Protocol for Treatment of Substance Use Disorders in Kenya by the Ministry of Health, drug abuse has been increasing in Kenya, especially among the youth, with statistics indicating that more than half of drug users are aged between 10 and 19 years. Further aware that research released by the National Authority for the Campaign Against Drug Abuse, NACADA, in December 2022, placed Western region as the leading region in alcohol and substance abuse at 23.8%, followed by the Coast region at 13.9%, and Central region at 11.9%. Recognizing that the high level of drug abuse in the Western region is attributed to illegal entry points from neighboring counties and unlicensed establishments, especially in Bungoma and Busia counties, with statistics indicating 2 out of every 5 establishments in Bungoma operate illegally. Further, recognizing that a majority of the consumers of illegal substances are school-going children who end up dropping out of school, cognizant of the fact that Alcohol Drinks Control Act 2010 established the Alcohol Drinks Control Fund, whose purpose is to, among other things, facilitate the dissemination of information on alcoholic drinks and promote rehabilitation programs in the country. This House urges the government to institute intensive programs for the dissemination of information on alcohol and substance abuse in line with the Alcohol Drinks Control Act 2010, and to increase the number of rehabilitation centers across the country. The Honorable Mishimboko.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia nafasi kuzungumzia hoja hii, na niweze kumshukuru sana Mheshimiwa Makalu kwa kuleta hoja ambayo ni muhimu sana. Kwa hakika nataka nikubaliane na ripoti za NACADA ambazo zimeweza kutuangazia kwamba sehemu za Busia na sehemu za Mombasa ndio ziko katika nambari 1 na 2 katika takrimu zile za mambo ya utumiaji wa pombe haramu na pia kutumia madawa ya kulevya. Kwa hakika tukiangalia nchi yetu haijawekeza zaidi kupata taasisi za umma ambazo zinaangalia mambo ya madawa ya kulevya na kuweza kunasua vijana ambao wamepotea na wameharibika katika madawa ya kulevya. Hivyo basi ni muhimu sana serikali iweze kuweka taasisi katika kila kaunti katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, iwe na taasisi ambayo itaweza kunasua vijana ambao wamebobea ama wameharibika katika mihadarati na pia mambo ya pombe haramu. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia sasa hata katika sehemu zetu ambazo tunaishi katika mitaa yetu utapata kuna sehemu zinaitwa wine and spirits. Mtu ametengeza kibanda ambacho anaweza kuuza zile pombe kali sana, na wanazitengeza pia katika vipakiti vidogo vidogo na zinawekwa kwa bei rahisi sana, ambapo hata mtoto wa shule anaweza kununua kwa shilingi 50 na kuweza kutumia pombe hiyo. Ni wakati mwafaka umefika ya kwamba lazima tupige msasa pia kupitia county, kupitia serikali za county, tuone ya kwamba wameangalia pia zile sehemu ambazo biashara kama hizi zinawekwa. Vile vile pia Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka nizungumzie ya kwamba ni wakati umefika ama hospitali yetu yaweze kuwa na sehemu ama ile Kiingereza tunasema department ambazo zitakuwa zinazungumzia haswa mambo ya madawa ya kulevya na mambo ya pombe haramu, ili kuweza kunasua Wakenya wetu wengi ambao wameingia katika mitihani kama hii, hivyo basi kuweza kuharibu maisha yao. Vile vile pia nataka kuzungumzia kwamba kwa wakati wa nyuma tulikuwa na maofisa ambao walikuwa wanatembea nyanjani wakizungumzia swala la mambo ya kupanga uzazi, masuala ya mambo ya maradhi haya ya HIV na masuala mengine, hata masuala ya kilimo. Wakati umefika tuwe na maofisa wa kutembea nyanjani, wa kuweza kuzungukia zile sehemu tunazita maskani, zile sehemu ambazo vijana hawa wanaweza kufanya shughuli nyingi sana zile za mihadarati na kuweza kunywa pombe na mambo kama yale. Umma wetu unapotea, watoto wetu wadogo sana, miaka 18 kuja chini, hata miaka 15 kuja chini, wameingia katika mihadarati na wameingia katika pombe haramu. Tumekuwa hatuna umma ule mchanga ambao utaweza kufikiria mambo ya kimaisha na mambo ya kujenga uchumi, kwa sababu wameingia katika swala hili. Swala jingine ni kwamba masuala ya usalama, masuala ya vitengo vya kusimamia usalama, tukiangazia kuanzia chifu mdogo na chifu DCC na mpaka kuangalia polisi wetu. Wamefanya mikakati gani kuhakikisha ya kwamba hata haya madawa ya kulevya hayaingii hapa nchini, haya madawa ya kulevya hayafiki kule nyanjani? Kwa sababu wakati ilipokuwa madawa haya hayafiki nyanjani, hatukuwa na takrimu kubwa za kuonyesha ya kwamba vijana wamebobea katika mambo haya. Lakini kwa sababu ni rahisi kuzipata, ni rahisi kupata mihadarati, ni rahisi kupata pombe haramu, hivyo basi kila mmoja ameingia katika mambo kama haya, hivyo basi uchumi unadorora na maisha ya Wakenya na afya ya Wakenya pia inaweza kudorora. ni wakati muafaka serikali iangalie vile inavyofadhili nakada. Nakada ni taasisi lakini ufadhili wake ni mchache sana. Tunaona hata katika boda zetu hakuna maofisa wa nakada kuhakikisha kwamba miadarati haitapitia katika boda na kufika huku nyanjani. Tunaona ya kwamba Busia pale, Malaba pale, Lunga, miadarati inapita kwa njia nyingi sana hata kupitia bahari. Lakini je, vitengo vya usalama? Ni wakati muafaka kuwe na vitengo mahsusi kabisa ambavyo vimewekwa vya usalama kuangalia swala la mihadarati. Vile vile pia ni wakati muafaka, lazima sheria tuibadilishe kutoka miaka 18 mpaka 21 mtu ndo anaruhusika kuweza kunywa pombe. Tukiweka hivyo tutasaidia vijana wengi sana ambao wameingia katika pombe wakiwa na umri wa chini sana. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hili ni swala muhimu, lazima.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mishi Mboko. The Honorable Member for Buuri, Rindikiri Mogambi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've just come from the Parliamentary Caucus on Drugs and Substance Abuse with the UNDC and the World Health Organization. This matter of drug usage is becoming an epidemic in Kenya, because basically in all parts of the country, including the traditional areas of northeastern, where we never hunt a lot of drug abuse, it is now becoming a menace. Madam Speaker, it is the high time that we stand together and save the generation of tomorrow. As I stand here, my constituency, Bori, sits on the transit route of drugs from Ethiopia and also from Nairobi. Madam Speaker, it is a national concern which has also brought in the presidency to fight against the menace. Madam Speaker, this menace is with us as a business, is with us as a matter of relaxation. It is with us because we believe the only area, part of the one that is left is Africa, and Africa, according to our enemies, it must be destroyed through abuse of drugs. I therefore stand to support this motion and say it's the high time this country now seriously deliberates. As we deliberate on the cost of fuel, as we deliberate on the cost of living, we need to urgently discuss the effect of drugs and drug abuse. Madam Speaker, each member of this parliament should take this as a very serious concern, because we are not going to have voters of tomorrow. Madam Speaker, this abuse of drugs has gone all the way to primary schools. It is available in churches. It's available in bars. It's available on the street openly. It's available in the security installations also. So it's a national disaster as far as I'm concerned. And therefore, as we propose to move ahead, I think we have to change some legislation. We have to change some legislation. We have to say that things like tobacco and coatings, all those kind of items, they are no longer good for our society. We must take the hard decisions. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member for Buhuri. The Honorable Catherine Omanyo, Member for Busia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also want to add bells and whistles to this motion by saying no anytime, because for us to have a healthy and productive society, we should not shy away. We are losing children. Personally, I have been affected. Family members, cousins, friends I knew, if I meet them, they are becoming social misfits, and people like segregate and avoid such people. And also, if you find even neighbors, they can even make it worse and say, a so-and-so's child or so-and-so's husband or so-and-so's wife is just a mess. So it just makes it even worse, because as a nation, I think we are not doing much. Our border points, the sea areas, Malindi, Lamu, is actually the places where these traffickers target to root themselves into a nation. So as a nation, I think unless somebody's family has been hit hard, maybe a son or a daughter, that's when somebody wants to rise up. We should, from the morning to evening, keep reminding people how drugs can affect a family. And we know very well that drugs can either be introduced to somebody, so that means even in primary schools and secondary schools, let it not just be taught as part of a unit for people to cram and pass exams, but teachers who handle such units to actually go deeper and let the children know that if you are introduced to some of these drugs, even just testing, you get addicted. Just trying, you get addicted. These traffickers have made sure that they introduce drugs to young people to make them look cool. You even hear some of these children who use drugs, their English is different, how they dress is different, they make it attractive, and many young people, because of peer influence, they think it is cool to use drugs. Let the teachers go deeper and tell them immediately you puff, like some of these drugs. It takes 7 years to come out of their brains. So you start turning into a cabbage. Let also the teachers and us, adults and everybody, to be responsible and say, these drugs make you turn into a cabbage. So who wants to look like a cabbage? So also we have made these drugs be very available. You can even go to a pharmacy and there are drugs that are prescribed that make you drunk the whole day. Why should we have such drugs on our shelves?
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker, but I had a lot to contribute.
Thank you very much, Member for Busia. Honorable members, I see many of you wanted to speak, including the Honorable Jessica Mbalu, member for Kibwezi East, the Honorable Jerry Maina, many of you, the Honorable Donya, Honorable Sanei, but unfortunately time is up. Honorable members, and the time now being 1:00 p.m., this House stands adjourned until this afternoon, Wednesday, the 4th day of October 2023 at 2:30 p.m.